All right, for more on World Food Day, we're now joined by FoodForward South Africa, Bobby Jacobs. Bobby Jacobs, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. As FoodForward South Africa, part of what you do is, of course, deal with the question of wastage. You say waste not, want not, but you're opening up channels for the redistribution of food and transforming lives. What are some of the key challenges that you are looking at in that particular space?
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. So currently in South Africa, we have 10 billion tons of edible food that goes to waste every year. And we're looking at 30 million South Africans who suffer from food insecurity. So FoodForward SA is focused on accessing edible surplus food from the current food chain and making it available to people who need it most. So vulnerable communities dealing with food insecurity, which we know in the current economic circumstances is expanding greatly. And essentially our greatest challenge is accessing surplus food, edible food from within the existing food supply chain, particularly in the agri-processing sector and in the manufacturing sector.
Yeah.
Sorry?
So the theme for this year's World Food Day, just as you say, that is around right to food for a better life and a better future. But I'm reading that to saying right food as well. Is there a concern, I suppose, with the food that you are distributing, that it is the right kind of food that ensures better life?
And at the moment, so FoodForward South Africa is a registered food bank with the Global Food Banking Network internationally. We have high international certification as a registered food bank. We are the largest food bank on the continent in Africa. We have a national footprint within South Africa, so we have a presence in every single province. And we don't distribute waste food. We distribute surplus food. So it's food that is edible, within date, healthy, nutritious food that we access from agricultural processing and food manufacturing processing. So within those processes, there is a high amount of surplus, and that's the food that we access, or we're trying to access as much as possible and redistribute to people who need it. To help us in that particular process, we're working with the Consumer Goods Council and the South African Bureau of Standards to establish a South African national standard or policy for food donation. And that is to help standardize and regulate the manner in which food manufacturers and agri-processors in South Africa donate food, and to help encourage the sector and the actors within the food supply chain to release and donate surplus food to us or to other bodies like us as early as possible so that we can distribute it.
So statistics in 2023 indicating that 18.2 million people in South Africa living in extreme poverty, more than half of the country experiences food insecurity. Is this an affordability challenge? Is this an adequacy of food challenge, or is it a wastage challenge, as you put it?
So essentially, it's an access challenge. There is more than enough food produced in South Africa every year to feed everybody. There really is. The statistics show us, and this is from the CSIR in their 2021 study, that 18% of food is lost in the agri-processing storage process, and up to 39% of food is lost in the manufacturing process. And so these are the food losses that we're trying to reduce by accessing surplus food in those processes from those manufacturers and agri-processors as early as possible. But because of a lack of sort of national regulation or a national standard on how or not just retailers, but manufacturers need to be dealing with food and donating food, there isn't really an incentive at this stage for corporates. So corporates do it at a sort of on a voluntary basis in how they donate food to FoodForward SA and other organizations. We would like for there to be a national policy or a national donations standard for food donations in South Africa, so that all corporates and people or food actors in the agri-processing sector would all be encouraged to donate surplus food, to donate their surpluses early for redistribution.
You've been at this for a while now. I mean, myself personally have been engaged with FoodForward, having this particular conversation for at least 2 years, if my memory serves me well. Why is this process taking so long?
So FoodForward SA has been at this for 15 years. And I think in the beginning, in particular, there's very little incentive for corporates to do it. Right now, we're sitting also with a climate crisis and the issue around greenhouse gas emissions, and managing food loss and food waste appropriately. So in the Western Cape and nationally, there will be a ban on organic waste to landfills. In Cape Town or in the Western Cape, it's by 2027. And nationally, it's either by 2030 up to 2035, where there'll be a complete ban on organic waste to landfills. So that is motivating manufacturers and agri-processors to think differently and to be more efficient with how they treat their food processing, how they treat their food process, and also about making food available earlier in the process for redistribution. Because of course there is now the incentive to potentially deal with carbon credits and looking at being more green and climate friendly in how they do business.
So for donors looking to support you, maybe just quickly giving them stats of what you deal with on a daily basis. I know today it's World Food Day, so maybe your efforts would have been amped up a little bit more. But on a day-to-day basis, how many meals are you packaging? How many organizations are you supporting? And how much food does that actually represent?
Sure. So our stats at the moment are sitting at, we are currently serving 920,000 meals a day. We are serving 2,500 beneficiary organizations throughout South Africa. And essentially, we are distributing 21,000 tons of food. So the stats are available on our website, and ways to support FoodForward SA, either by volunteering or donating, is also available at foodforwardsa.org.
Yeah. Your food banking systems currently in Joburg, in Cape Town and in Durban, any other places?
Actually, we have a presence in all 9 provinces. So we're in Mpumalanga, we have a distribution center in Limpopo, in the Free State, Northern Cape and Eastern Cape. But the 3 biggest distribution centers are Western Cape, Durban and Johannesburg, and that's where we hosted our 3 World Food Day events today as well, which was incredibly well supported, and we'd like to thank our donors and our volunteers very much for coming out and supporting FoodForward SA today.
Yeah. The process of legislation, and where is it right now, and are people still expected to have some kind of participation in it in terms of comments, or is it at a much more advanced stage now?
I'm afraid it's not at a very much more advanced stage. At this stage, we are working with the South African Bureau of Standards to have a SANS, or South African National Standard, but that would obviously involve sort of a voluntary sign-up. And then we're hoping that the voluntary sign-up and the SANS will be the precursor to actual legislation. But food security sits across many or multiple departments. And so it is challenging to get all the departments on the same page to decide who will be the lead department to take legislation around food security forward.